pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
7-member board, we have 6 members present to establish the quorum. We'll jump right into old business. 1408 Deer Pond Elliott Road, major 62 lot subdivision. Review for possible granting of extension of the conditional preliminary plat approval.
Sorry if
Yeah, so, yeah, if you're presenting and you're up at the podium, you take your mask off, and just ask to keep your mask off.
Thank you. Good evening. Andy Brick on behalf of Surya Salafu, who's the project sponsor for Deer Pond. I was hoping to be here before you at this point for final plat approval. That has not transpired, unfortunately. When Surya called me and asked if I could go head over and seek an additional 3-month extension, and he had been advised to stay downstate due to COVID, so otherwise he would be here. So please don't take his non-attendance as any indication of lack of interest. I told him that, in my opinion, I have been here so many times before that if he even wanted to send me over to request an additional extension, he would have to make it clear that it would be the final request, that we would get this done within this last extension. He agreed, so I am here tonight to ask for one final 3-month extension in order to get done what we need to get done on our side to make sure we are back before you in that 3-month time frame, seeking our final plat approval.
So, I mean, if you outline what's left to get done, and I guess, Adam, how many extensions is this? Like 7?
I think it's 6 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably starting in 2014. So what is left to get done in the 90s?
3 things. We need sign off from DEC related to sewer, and they are prepared to sign off right before COVID in February. They sent the memo saying, hey, if you get us these revised figures from the town and a final set of plans, we'll sign off. So we believe we can accomplish that very quickly. With the water side, Department of Health had issued a comment letter. Boswell Engineering, our project engineers, were working on responding to that, and then COVID hit, so they still have to finish that comment letter and get it to DOH for their sign off. And then the last is Rensselaer County DPW for the curb cut. If you recall, for whatever reason during the approval process, they weren't included. They had never seen the traffic study or the design, so we had submitted that to them post-approval. And we had followed up with them a number of times and hadn't gotten a response, but that still is a remaining item. We don't anticipate they're going to have any concerns. It's just a matter of coordinating with them, getting them to focus on it, and get a response back from them. Adam graciously has offered to assist us with both county agencies to not expedite approvals, but at least make sure that they are processing them, so we can hopefully get back to the line.
So you have to excuse my pessimism, but I think we had offered that, a number of, maybe 1 or 2 extensions ago, I think, right? So I just, you think you get this done in 90 days? I'm not inclined, if we were to vote on this tonight, I'm not inclined to do it again.
Candidly, I think we have to, based upon what you just represented. I don't think I could come up here again and seek another extension. I think we need to get it done this time. If you recall, the first year wasn't necessarily our fault because DEC said, can you wait a year because we want to get the sewer figures. So that put us on hold. So it wasn't really our fault. But since January 1, it's all been on us to get this accomplished. We haven't candidly pushed the ball forward at all since January 1. Not going to sit here and try and blame it on COVID, although obviously that happened in the middle of it. It's our responsibility to get it done. I think we have to get it done within 90 days because I don't think I can ask for a number.
Yeah, I guess my point is, this is the seventh extension, that's 630 days. So, any comments or questions from the board? I would just certainly emphasize to your client that you make this his utmost priority because I'm not sure we're going to vote on this again.
Understood.
And I don't want to be a pain. I just, I don't want to 20 years from now, still be talking.
Mr. Chairman, I think you're very, very clear and I can convey the message.
Everyone's good? All right, that'll make a motion to grant extension for Deer Pond Major 62 lot cluster subdivision. Whereas the town of Scrimmage Planning Board granted conditional preliminary plat pre-construction approval of the above-mentioned subdivision on April 11, 2018. And whereas the preliminary plat approval dated April 11, 2018 required the applicant to satisfy several conditions within the 180 calendar days of the resolution, whereas in accordance with Article 4, Section 5 of the town subdivision regulations, the final plat and other supplementary documents shall be filed with the clerk of the planning board within 180 days after preliminary plat approval. And whereas the applicant was granted extension in accordance with the town subdivision regulations on September 10, 2018, January 9, 2019, April 10, 2019, July 8, 2019, and October 8, 2019, January 8, 2020, extending conditional approval until January 8, 2020. Be it resolved that the town of East Scrimmage Planning Board hereby grants extensions to be applied retroactively to the period July 8, 2020 through October 6, 2020 to the applicant to satisfy the conditions within the preliminary plat approval and file the final plat and supplementary documents in accordance with Article 4, Section 5 of the town subdivision regulations. And be it further resolved that the planning board hereby grants extension of conditional approval in accordance with Article 4, Section 5 of the town subdivision regulations commencing on October 6, 2020 until January 4th, 2021. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Pan.
Roll call as follows, Chairman Masten,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Kupiec. Yes. Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Ms. Warren,
Yes.
Mr. Panton,
Yes.
motion carried by 6-0 vote.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No slight on you, but we look forward to not seeing you on
Thank you for your patience.
Next thing we want to do, 1719A, 580 Columbia Turnpike, Town of Turner, Phase 1 site.
Steve Hart with Hart Engineering, Tyler Culverson, for the Town Center project. So in essence, I know we had met a few times seeking amended PED. Really don't have much new to talk about tonight. I don't know if the board had any questions or concerns that we might be able to address, but these are the plans that we had last time here in front of you, and I think we had some back and forth last time here. Certainly, again, if there's anything outstanding, assist in your thought process, more than happy to address it.
Anyone on the board have any comments or questions? Chris or John? Are folks generally okay with the minor amendment? Or, sorry, voting on minor amendment?
We went over most of this the last time he was here.
Yeah, I've seen it. Okay,
I think one of the only outstanding issues last time was just the draining and grading for the pond that's been done.
Yes. Was that Crystal? I think 2 meetings ago, I think we had that pond over there, so we did take the pond out of that intersection and moved it over on this side, which is the old Mount Vernon America's Best Value Motel or something this year. So we did push it over on this side of the building.
is she good? Okay, so that'll make a motion for the proposed minor PPD amendment for 580 Columbia Turnpike. Whereas 580 Columbia Turnpike LLC has submitted an application requesting certain changes to the existing town center plan development district PDD, which the town board approved by adopting local law number 1 in January 2020. Whereas the proposed changes involve the area labeled future development pattern and the approved PDD concept plan, which was restricted to commercial use and included a maximum size of 25,000 square feet of commercial space. Whereas the proposed amendment would allow first floor commercial space of approximately 9,500 square feet and up to 24 residential units in the upper floors, with the 24 residential units to be reallocated to the future development pad area from other phases of the PDD, and therefore resulting in no change to the previously approved 275 total number of residential units. And whereas, as indicated in the attached July 20th, 2020 memorandum, in accordance with the town's comprehensive zoning law, section 2.9.11, the building inspector determined that the proposed PDD amendment is a minor amendment pursuant to CDL section 2.9.12, and referred the proposed PDD amendment to the planning board in accordance with section 2.9.12, And whereas in accordance with CZL section 2.9-12, the planning board held a duly noticed public hearing on September 9, 2020, during which time members of the public were afforded the opportunity to speak about the proposed PDD amendment. And whereas the planning board, as an involved agency, has carefully reviewed the application documents, which indicate the PDD as amended would consist of the same number of residential units, present a reduced traffic impact than the original analyzed uses, reduce sewer and water impacts by approximately 1,600 gallons per day, reduce the need for parking, and generally concentrate more units along Columbia Turnpike, thereby reducing the development impact of the adjacent existing residential neighborhoods. And therefore finds that the negative declaration previously issued by the town board on January 2nd, 2020 as lead agency is sufficient to cover the proposed amendment, and that this amendment does not have the effect of creating any significant adverse environmental impact. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town of East Streamers Planning Board hereby affirms that the negative declaration issued by the Town of East Streamers Town Board sufficiently covers this minor amendment, and that there will be no significant adverse impacts associated with the proposed PDD amendment, and be it further resolved that the Town of East Streamers Planning Board hereby approves the PDD minor amendment in accordance with section 2.9 and 12 of the comprehensive zoning law. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Kupiec.
Roll call as follows, Chairman Matheson,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Kupiec. Yes. Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Ms. Warren,
Yes.
Mr. Panton,
Yes.
motion carried by a 6-0 vote.
Very much.
Thank you.
Next, we move on to 2017 Collins 137 Columbia Turnpike minor site plan modification. Collins 137 Columbia Turnpike. Oh, wait, is he left it?
Sorry, is it 137?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
these
30.
two,
You're the only Collins on the agenda.
Tonight. My name is Rick Kessler. I'm a realtor representing the owner of the property, Mr. Carbondale, sitting here, and the potential tenant of Collins sitting there as well. I have a variety of things here to show you. Two things, one that our main concern is parking for this location.
Yeah, it would, yes, parking.
So, and our issue is primarily is that it's a time issue for us.
Yeah, I recall from the last meeting.
Brian hasn't been able to find an engineer, anybody who drawings appropriately for you guys. So we had him, they do this work, I'll show this to you. Several.
You got the North Arrow on there.
I do want to mention that these drawings are the originals and they do not reflect some of the details that Adam and I had spoken about. This one right here actually has all of the details on it as far as prior to speaking with Adam what we were going to do with the parking areas. The parking area here will be, here's A, and then the front, and those size, where it's not.
So Adam, maybe you can give a quick summary of the issues with parking.
Yeah, I think as your summary had provided, the required amount is 8.16 or 8.12 roughly. So for that commercial space, that would be, rounded up 9 spaces. So I think the question in front of the board last time, some of the issues we discussed were A, making sure that the parking was sufficient, B, that it met the standards of the code, the configuration, the size, the aisle widths, that kind of thing. That also that there was an accessible space, required under the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. And then also to confirm how the parking would, how these changes would affect the residential, uses there. I guess there are 2 single-family homes that are, I believe they're rented out. That requires 4 spaces across those 2 uses. So we had gone, the site configuration presents some challenges for, the configuration of the parking, right? I mean, for example, the handicap accessible space, it seems like the rear of the building makes, good sense there, because it's, I believe it's 16 feet that you need for an accessible space, so that's 8 feet for the vehicle, and then 8 feet alongside, on the right side for access to the vehicle. So that, you can't do that in the front along the curb line, obviously, so. But again, that is probably, and I don't know the configuration of the building exactly, and if there are steps, but if you have a disabled customer who needs to park there or has a permit to park, they would, obviously have to walk around to the front, which is sort of contrary to the intent of the ADA. And then I think one of the key the key gaps in information on here is how the parking would be allocated among the various uses, this new commercial use and then the residential use.
I think we can address, on the schematic, I think they're pointed out as well, and on the photos, which are just old Google Earth photos, you'll notice,
Change of tendency, right?
it's still change tendency, it's all that's correct. And we're under a bit of a time constraint, because the tenant has to vacate, I believe, by the end of this month.
So, I was gonna, I guess first, one on the board, comments, concerns, questions.
I quickly read the material that was sent, but I didn't have a chance before I came tonight to print it out. Could you give like just another quick overview of what,
Would that be good?
maybe,
What's the business consist of?
It's an environmental laboratory.
yeah,
Right.
okay. And it's that building in the middle that's for lease?
That's correct.
Okay. The building on the right of that is one of my favorite buildings in East Greenbush.
The stone house?
Yeah, with the carport.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah, I would be many years ago.
I was gonna propose that we vote on conditional approval, with the caveat that the outstanding issue is parking, right? It seems like, we always have outstanding technical details, and that's the condition. I feel it could be handled by parking department as opposed to us hammering through that. I don't know how folks feel about that. Joe added a condition that speaks directly to that.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
The materials that were sent out on the site plan to the board prior to the meeting show the parking in a different location than these big schematics. These show, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 spots that are butted right up against the building,
We may have,
as opposed to these are horizontal across the street from the building.
yeah, I'm not quite sure, that wouldn't work, I don't believe.
Right, so that is actually an old drawing, that's a secondary drawing that was provided to Brian, prior to, agreeing on the fact that we should have parallels.
After our conversation with Adam, we reworked the parking to make it more convenient and provide as much as possible. While the tenant doesn't really have a large need, according to at least the requirements to the code. Nevertheless, we have to meet the code, or hopefully we'll have some relief on the code.
Okay.
And then we have, I believe,
So
this.
this isn't.
No, that's not correct.
And so which of these spots will the single family?
For the single family to the north here, or the right left of the building, they have a 2-car garage in the rear that they have complete access to, and additionally, there's about 3 surface spots in the rear as well, behind their building. The home to the south and the right of the building has parking basically almost anywhere. They generally park just directly in front of the building. And you can see on that photo, there's some 2 spots there, but there's several other spots where they park along there. Additionally, there's grass here, which Mr. Tucker said, he wouldn't mind if it's necessary that they park there, which would leave us, basically a wide open 27-foot wide drive in front of both those buildings.
So how many parking spots do you think for this business you can fit?
Well, we're proposing 3 in the rear and section A, three on the east side by Ferguson, section B, stripe, that's 6, and then putting the ADA space right in front of the building, which even if it came off the building 16 feet, as Adam was saying, it would still give us 11-foot clearance for a drive-through.
7 spots might require. Does the board have any flexibility on the relief? I only say this in the sense that this used to be a construction.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Used to be.
Used to be a contractor, so they
Yeah.
probably had, I would assume they had significantly more traffic than environmental lab.
We have, you know, our customers drop off samples, they're there for less than 5 minutes generally. So it's kind of in and out, and we're figuring between maybe 5 an hour, it's not a big thoroughfare of people that come in.
How many if we have a spot?
I think there is, section, I believe there is a provision in here for reducing, so if you look at, section 3.1.4A on page 45, parking area smaller than the required minimum, voluntary reduction, so an applicant proceeding with site plan review may request that the minimum number of required off-street parking spaces be reduced for their project if they can demonstrate to the planning board that their business would not actually warrant the minimum amount required during normal operations, or that other opportunities such as shared parking would account for the difference. So it's, I think we can certainly work through the technical details of where and how, and the configuration and that kind of thing, but, you know, it would help, I think, for the board to sort of walk through, like, what do we mean by demonstrate to the planning board, you know, what do we
How many
mean?
employees do you have?
We went 4.
That leaves 3 spots left. So 5 an hour, something like they show up at the same time, right?
It's certainly possible, of course, but, you know, I think
Are these scheduled appointments or they?
no, they just drop off.
There is additional places to park that we haven't outlined per se, if there was overflow we're talking about, all along the line of the houses and the grass, there's probably 3 or 4 spots you could put there, assuming that the people in the home are actually there to park there, utilizing the spaces. And you still have a drive-through access, you know, clear by the fire.
But if they have a garage and they have a place to park behind their house, and there's the spots there up front, I don't know, unless people think differently, it seems like something that could be handled between the applicant and.
Now, are you planning on striping the area?
Yeah.
So there's no conflict between the tenants,
Yes.
customers.
I think that'd be helpful, so they don't end up in town hall yelling at me. Which, I mean, that's not my job.
We don't have that.
Is
So
this
you
the
will
same?
be striping it? You will be striping it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
And striping for the residential as well as commercial.
So is this the same business that was in the papers?
It is.
As being, it's gonna be sold by St. Peter's?
It is,
That's the rush, that's the contract, right?
that's correct. We're actually closing next week, on the 1st.
You know, if we decide to go with less parking, it looks like what you're doing is utilizing your existing macadam here, you're not providing any more paving, so the only expense to you will be striping this off, right?
Correct.
So if we agree to do less parking, we've been trying to encourage businesses to, well, especially new developments, to put the parking behind the building, so the cars are not parked right on the turnpike, which is what's occurring here all the time. And you know I love the building, but if we did that, is there any opportunity that we could get some landscaping or something to green up the fronts of these buildings a little to make them look a little bit nicer?
I can certainly plant trees, I have no problem with that, It's- I'm pretty flexible about that.
Yeah,
I like plants myself.
yeah, because it's just, there's such handsome, even the little commercial building, that could be very, very nice.
As long as, you know, Rich is on board with that.
You know, and to try and
I
jazz it
actually
up a
was-
little, maybe.
I actually, in the spring, the house that you like.
Yeah,
To the right of that, there's lawn area, and I could actually dig that out and have at least of 1 or 2 parking spots for those tenants in that lawn area if I needed to be.
yeah, I mean, then you're adding a little more macadam, but, you know, so it's not in the front, yeah? Yeah, it's such a long lot, it's awkward for you, I can see where it's a challenge.
So it does sound like there may be an opportunity to reduce the number of spots or come close, right?
I think we come close, I certainly don't think there'd be.
I mean, if you're at 7 now, it's a matter of 1 or 2.
I'd love to see somebody who take advantage of the Burger King and do something nice with it, and the more people that do a little bit nicer with
So
their,
I'd like to see
their
that.
businesses, it might spark something.
Is it an option to grant sort of approval and then see how reduced parking works? Have the applicant come back in 6 months, because there is clearly easy opportunities here for additional spaces.
You mean non-conditional approval and monitor it?
Yeah.
We've done that, I'm doing that in a project now in Rensselaer, where we were allowed to bank, we needed 10 spots, but they let us put 6 in. And if the neighbors complain over a certain amount of years, then we have to put the spots in. We reduce it because the tenants went
Is
to.
that the kind of conditions you would be looking at, and how do you evaluate that? I guess is my question.
Well, complaints to
Yeah.
it.
How many people come in and complain?
Right, okay.
Or people parking, you know, really
Or-
close so nobody can get in the driveways and making a hazard for people pulling in and out.
I can tell you, you're not gonna have no complaints on the other side of the building, because my son lives in that house.
Well,
And he parks in the back.
so
Yeah,
what we're
just-
saying is you probably won't have any complaints.
Right.
Don't make them mad.
It could be an observation from a town
Oh, he's
official.
not even gonna get through
Parking
because
places don't apply as well.
Yeah, I mean,
So I guess, and just what Jim's getting at, I don't want to speak for you, but what that does is essentially we approve it at 7 lots, and then there's not really much negotiation between you and the planning department at that time.
Sounds good to me.
But then, you know, maybe it should be in your head thinking about where you can get those 2 extra spots. And as, you know, over a 6-month, 3-6-month period, whatever that period is,
Mhm.
if we do get a bunch of complaints, then we can have to come back and add 2 spots.
That sounds reasonable, doesn't it?
I didn't hear him.
Okay. That's
He was
You're suggesting that they approve the parking we have outlined now and watch how much traffic is going through there.
Yeah.
If it looks like it's backing up, then we would agree to try to find a couple more spots.
Yeah. I'm
So we would just ask that you come back in, I don't know, 6 months,
Or, yeah,
3 months? whatever. How long until you would be operational?
We're hoping with the operational in a month or so, maybe 6 weeks.
Alright, so we'd probably be more inclined to do like a 6-month time period maybe. And then you guys come back in 6 months.
Perfect.
Right, yeah, because then we'll get to see how the snow,
Yeah.
pushing snow around will also.
would it be helpful to also monitor from our side, the approximate number of cars each day that go through, just so that we can.
Right. that-
Yeah, anything on your end that you can build your argument on, just say that it's good.
I mean, there's environmental benefits to less parking, so.
Yeah.
I mean, planning board has an incentive. there.
Yeah, and kind of the way that reads, it's voluntary reduction, right? So this is a flip of what most people want. Most people come in and they say, we need X amount of spots, but we want to multiply that by 2, and you end up with a giant park.
Matt, is there any sidewalks in front of that at all, or is it all?
No, there isn't, it's blacktop right up to the door, flat.
But there is a sidewalk along Columbia Turnpike,
Yes,
so there is a sidewalk
Between the curb and the front?
between the property and the house.
Okay, all right, I couldn't remember.
That's new, that's pretty new, right? Or one,
Oh,
there's a new one somewhere.
Yeah, it's, I don't know if the concrete is new, but I think they leveled it, the sidewalk itself.
well, I think they made it wheelchair accessible with the dips and everything.
I guess it's part of the
So
big
let's-
9
let's-
and 20 sidewalks.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good solution, Matt.
Well, very fun. So 6 months from now.
Okay, so we're gonna say May 1st.
Okay. Mark that down. Wonderful. Thank you.
Put a reminder in your iPhone. Don't forget. Everyone good?
Everybody these, or you only?
Yeah, I guess, second part. That is a motion to approve for town original, town regional environment design for the turnpike. Town of East Rivers Planning Board hereby classifies its actions as type 2 action, which involves striping of the existing parking lot, existing zoning, local land use, or secret in chapter 6, part 617.5 C1, codes, rules, and regulations of the state of New York, and approves the site plan modification consisting of the attached section, parking areas designated A, B, and the ADA required parking space, subject to the following conditions: satisfying outstanding technical details as determined by the town planning and zoning department. All remaining fees are paid to the town. And the site be striped in compliance with the proposed site plan and to the satisfaction of the town planning and zoning department and code enforcement officer. The site plan shall expire on April 30th, 2021, and the applicant shall obtain site plan reapproval from the planning board by May 1st, 2021. Do I have a second?
No second.
Second by Mr. Payne.
Roll call as follows, Chairman Maskey,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Kupiec,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Ms. Warren,
Yes.
Mr. Canton,
Yes.
motion carried by 6-0 vote.
Good luck with the spring.
Thank you all very much, appreciate it.
you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
We have no new business. Next, we move on to ZBA reports. Start with ZBA payroll 2010. Big Red Dog House, 720 acres, like 3 area variances. The board recommends
Okay. I had a site visit there on the 14th, and I went down just to measure the sign. And it's,
Excuse me, could you guys be outside? Thank you. Good night. Thanks for
We're gonna encourage that.
Sergeant at Arms, new title.
okay, I went down to measure the sign. So you want to use the original sign, which is Marketplace at the Sweater Venture, which is there now. And that's a pylon sign. It's been called a monument sign, but it's not. It's a pylon. Again, it's over 9 feet tall, and it's exactly 8 feet wide. So I just got a hold of Darren Katz, the Saxton sign, and asked him exactly what he's up to, what he's doing. They're using that pole, they're using a sign, and they're building above it and below it, okay? They put the roof structure above it, and that's 8 feet wide too, except for those little points coming out the side, but otherwise it's an 8 foot wide facade on there. But it has changed, okay? It's not gonna be, as it's portrayed here, it's a monument sign. It's not gonna be that way. He's offered to trim 10 inches off the bottom, making it a pylon sign where it has increased height, parameters. And so it falls within parameters of a pylon sign. What they're gonna do is, again, it's gonna keep the Marketplace at the Sweater Venture intact, which according to zoning law there, the Sweater Venture shouldn't be on there. You're not supposed to have the name of an individual business, but how would they find the Sweater Venture if it wasn't? So by putting the Big Red Dog House below and a little roof structure above it and trimming 10 inches off, it will be a pylon sign which meets the code, except for it shouldn't have the individual businesses on there. I don't know how else people are gonna find it. As I went by it about 3 times driving, and you need a sign there. They're not gonna know where the Sweater Venture is. Part of course, in the Big Red Dog House. I'm gonna approve it based on it being a pylon sign and not a monument sign, which is, they portray it now. He's already told me he's gonna trim it. So I make a recommendation that it's approved if he trims it down into the pylon sign. Be 10 inches of pole showing.
Trimmed it widthwise or? Trimmed it widthwise, Don, or
No, height-wise.
height?
Yeah, well, I shouldn't say height-wise. He's trimming 10 inches off to expose the pole. That is technically a pylon sign.
Okay, so the 60 inches goes down to 50?
I can't hear you.
The 60, what number gets reduced?
The amount at, where it says 700 at the bottom, he's redoing that because it's gonna have to be an exit, you know, it doesn't look like it's hacked off. So he's gonna take 10 inches there and expose 10 inches of pole, and then it'll be a pylon sign. That's a monument sign, it's they call it a wrap. And he says, really, it's way too high for a monument sign, but once it goes to a pylon sign, the height parameters increase.
Does seem, I mean, being adjacent to that new strip mall, which has a pretty significant sign. You know, as far as changing the neighborhood or whatnot, it's somewhat in line with that.
So this, the square at the bottom that has the number
He's gonna
700,
gonna trim that.
the bottom is
Yeah.
gonna be trimmed off of that.
So
there'll be-
she'll,
Instead of going flush to the ground, there'll be a pole.
yeah, it's gonna be this pole here, they're gonna use the old sign.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the original marketplace sign, again, you're not supposed to list a business on it. If you just said marketplace, how would they know how to find it? I thought that was kind of strange. But that's in place now, marketplace, that's a sweater venture. So except, it's gonna be 96 inches across, which is 8 feet, except for those two points on the above. It's still gonna have really the same dimensions. It'll be higher, but since it's a pylon sign, it can be higher.
So he's exposing the pole so it's a pylon.
Yes.
It's like saving the one wall at Verizon. So it's a rehab, okay, I got it.
Yeah, he's gonna have to make the 700 crisscross look better now, because he chops that off, it's not gonna be very good.
It's interesting that they make it look like a barn because that was a church, you know.
I went to Sunday.
Remember when they came for approval to put the doggy daycare in? I did the review on that one, and it's phenomenal church on the second floor of that. The ceilings are easily like 20 feet high.
I went to Sunday school there in the 1950s.
Did you?
Yeah. My parents joined that church in 1950.
Yeah.
I went fixture in school.
Now they're gonna sell sweaters and then be cleaning floors. Was anyone opposed to, giving positive recommendations to zoning board?
I think everybody loves the sweater venture and
Yes.
the doggy daycare is a good thing too.
It's going right in back.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one right next door is very popular, I put that out there.
The vets are running.
All right, so with that, I'll make a recommendation, or I make a motion that we accept Mr. Panton's report to the zoning board, giving a positive recommendation based on sound planning principles. Right? Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Long.
Roll call as follows, Chairman Matsman,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Kupiec,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Ms. Warren,
Yes.
Mr. Panton,
Yes.
motion carried by 6-0 vote.
Next, we're gonna move on to the very surprising report by Mr. Moore of the ZBA Appeal 2020-11, Story Road 597 Punky Turnpike. Before you start, I really thought this was going a different way.
The closer I looked at it, the more the issue became clear to me. So Verizon is, does anybody need would it helpful? Yeah. Verizon's proposing a sign on each of the 9 and 20 and Route 4 facades of their building. The allowable sign area is 24 square feet. Proposed is 25 and a half square feet. So it's a foot and a half square foot, 1.5 square feet in excess. I did a brief comparative sign analysis from a visual impact perspective, whereas compared, the proposed attachment of individual letters and the check mark versus a placard style sign, which would be allowed. And in essence, with such a small area increase and the sign style type being individual letters, which I would argue has a lesser visual impact, I'm recommending approval of the those signs.
No, I thought your report was very thorough, I appreciate you going to the other places and taking some pictures. Unless you stole that off the internet.
No, I actually went.
Still look better this weekend, you're right.
You have some of the building facade amongst the letters, which kind of helps reduce the visual impact, I think, of the sign.
Yeah, I'm afraid to oppose an architect when it comes to stuff like this, so I'm not.
Get anything through.
Yeah. Any comments, questions? All right, I will make a motion to accept Jim Moore's report for 2020-11 PCJ Troy Road, 597 Turnpike. Make a positive recommendation to the zoning board based on sound planning principles. Is that your report?
I didn't mention that.
Do I have a second? I'll second. Second by Mr. Burton.
Roll call as follows, Chairman Mattson,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Kupiec.
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Ms. Warren,
Yes.
Mr. Pan,
Yes.
motion carried by 6-0 votes.
Next, we move on to review and approval of meeting minutes, September 9, 2020. Who cannot vote?
Everybody can vote. You weren't, no, you can't vote, sorry. Yeah, you weren't here.
You shut me out.
Sorry.
Nice catch, Nancy. We do have modifications this morning.
Yes, it is.
I thought it was one on Chris.
He did it on purpose.
No, I caught it too.
And this is our favorite project, the 44 Troy Road section. The correction is the third bullet from the bottom, which in the minutes states, Chris Horn asked if they didn't want anything around the building along the sidewalk because that's where they would pushing snow. Brian Sipperly stated that's correct. And Brian Sipperly, my recollection is Brian Sipperly stated, no, snow is not an issue, so that's not correct. And that they can push snow other places, and so landscaping.
Actually,
along the
I know
sidewalk.
Joe made some corrections to mine, I didn't look at the differences, but, I listened to this really much verbatim, just
Yeah.
because there was, there was so much with it, but, yeah, I'll fix it.
Usually I only remember the things that I say.
Because I saw that, I saw your text, and I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm
no,
gonna
same thing.
compare the two of these, but, yeah, so I'll go back and make sure it says what it's supposed to say.
Thank you very much, Ms. Warren. Anything else?
I just wanted to bring up quickly on a note related to the sign variances. We had some communication between myself, Adam, the ZBA chair about trying to do what we can to get these sign issues taken care of at the site plan level rather than after, site plan's approved and then they're coming for variance. I know in some situations it's inevitable with Big Red Dog House, that was a year ago, they probably didn't know what sign they wanted to do. Concerning that Verizon just approved last month, another, and for a sign variance, and we've gotta do what we can to better vet that and get it cleaned up there, to take care of the site plan level based on, cleaner planning perspective and just secret perspective as well.
But at the same time, there's gonna be times where we can't prevent an applicant from just not being completely truthful at the time.
Correct.
There's only so much we can do. We can certainly do our best.
We talked, the sign it's a binary issue, it's either approved or it requires a variance, and so what we talked about was having Kevin's shop, the building and codes department. If they say we're gonna have a sign, they would basically apply to Kevin's shop, and then he wouldn't necessarily open a file on that or charge them for it, but he would help the board and conduct the review that he would conduct anyway, if they were to come back for a permit. So we did talk about that. Kevin said, I have to start a new filing system for this because it would be connected with a formal application. But that's something also that, we discussed anyway.
And I understood where the zoning board chairman was coming from, but at the same time, the majority of the time, we're looking at 2D plans, right? we do our best, we don't have architectural standards, we do, I think, a pretty good job of getting people, and pushing them to get 3D renderings for us to look at. Absolutely. Yeah, we can certainly try and address as much as we can. Yeah, if someone decides they get an approved site plan, a month later they decide they want a bigger sign, there's not much we can do with that. That, I'll make a motion to approve the September 9, 2020 meeting minutes, including this orange change to 5 seconds.
Second.
By Mr. Burke.
Everybody's gonna have Monica on site.
Oh.
That's not just me.
Yeah. I'm gonna run out and get an ice cream.
I'm gonna make sure I catch on me.
Okay, roll call as well.
Right
Chairman
here.
Mazza. Chairman Mazza.
Yes.
Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Ms. Kubiak.
Abstain.
Mr. Bergman.
Yes.
Ms. Horn.
Yes.
Mr. Pan.
Yes.
Motion carried by 5-0, 1 vote.
Then we have some planning and zoning department updates, comprehensive plan updates, and some stormwater potential drainage. What do you got?
Yeah, the comp plan update, basically, we have, the committee has received the draft plan, and it's in kind of internal review. Dahlia and myself have provided some comments on it. Ralph, who's not here, has seen it. So we're expecting, the next steps in the process are to release the plan to the public. The committee will need to do a public hearing under the New York State Town Law. So we're hoping to schedule that in the next couple of weeks, release the draft plan next week to the public. We'll keep you guys in the loop. About 10 days after we notice it, so it's probably early next week, we'll do, we're aiming for October 7th for the public hearing. That will be a presentation. We're gonna try to do a hybrid approach where we have people on Zoom and people in person, so we get as much participation as possible.
That's in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
What's it say about 2-story buildings in the B1 district?
It leaves that up to the next phase.
Could we get the draft sent to us by email?
When it's released, it's still under review by the steering committee. So we should have
Close to
final
the chest,
comments.
huh?
What's that?
Keep it close to the chest, huh?
That's the procedure.
Interesting, because we were just talking about, Chris and I, and I had said I would really have liked it if Ralph could give us an update periodically in our meeting, so we knew where it was at.
Probably
Instead of
right.
asking, but anyway.
So once, so the public comment period will open when the plan is posted. We'll keep it open for probably another week after the hearing. And ideally, if there aren't any major changes, the steering committee will vote to approve and forward to the town board, which begins the town board adoption process. There's seeker, there's a county referral, and they also have to have a public hearing. So I would expect that to occur fairly expeditiously.
So, can you, for the steering committee, as it is about to go to the public, could we just ask that maybe we please get an email to give us a heads up?
Oh yeah, as soon as we post the public hearing notice on the town's website, that'll have the link to the plan and everything. So we'll broadcast that.
Yeah, I was gonna, just because, I don't check the website, so it'd be helpful to.
Yeah, no, we'll keep you guys, the ZBA, yeah.
And then I'll text Jimmy to do
Well, I like to.
Figure out your transfer to you.
So if we have comments, do we just submit them during the public hearing?
You can accept written comments?
Yes, yeah, there will be, we have an email address for the project. You can send them to me, you can send them to Dahlia, to Allison, to complanupdate@eastgreenbush.org. And then, so it'll be open, the comment period will be about 17 days or so. It'll be open about a week after the public hearing. So, not necessarily at the public hearing.
And then the public comments and any other comments go back to the steering committee for presumably final revisions?
Right, so if we encounter, the committee encounters significant issues that we hadn't considered, that aren't in the plan, for example, that may delay and cause the committee to make more changes. I don't know if they would redo the public hearing, but they might, it's a good question how they would respond to that. If it's minor stuff, if it's little, punctuation or usage changes, probably just be reflected. If it's major changes, if maybe there's with the committee's forward to the town board, it's accompanied with a letter or something saying, we got these comments and we changed it this way. Our consultant will help us sort of step through that as well. I think it's going to depend on the nature of the changes. And the other way that the committee might handle it is at the meeting itself, when they would consider adoption at their next meeting, they might address the comments and discuss them publicly. That might be probably the most efficient way to do it.
So should we get our comments to Ralph since he's our representative on the steering committee?
You could send them to Ralph, you could send them, I would keep myself, Dahlia, in the loop. Just because we're interfacing with the steering committee, with the consultant as well.
They figure out the corner lots with having two front yards and
Yeah,
having a pool or shed.
We're up here, you're talking like down here.
I'm ready to get down here, let's go.
Next year, maybe later this year.
Fish. October.
I know, well,
You're optimistic, I appreciate that.
this time next year, we should know a lot of those details, Matt. I'm on the record saying that.
Closer to the mic.
Yep.
Be in the minutes.
It's good to hear from you.
We do, the town board has encumbered those funds, so the funding is there, it's a question of the process and, just the bandwidth, resources, getting the right people involved. I don't know exactly how that effort is gonna be managed, but I'm guessing it'll be another committee to do the zoning update. And we, obviously we'll keep you guys informed and, potentially solicit members of this board to serve on that committee as well, so.
Yeah, I am glad we stood our ground and didn't make any short-term changes to the existing zoning law and waited for the plans for us to happen. So your other that.
Yeah, the other one, and I can, I'll just say a couple of things and Dahlia can follow up as the stormwater officer. What we would propose is to conduct a training with you guys that is oriented toward low impact development and sort of what this board was talking about today about reducing, for example, parking. So with the idea being that that's good for not only for the environment, but it's also good if we don't have these enormous stormwater ponds and they're part of a major subdivision, the town doesn't have to maintain it. It's a better situation, and it also counts for MS4, training. So
So we did that. This was 4 or 5 years ago. But there was a time where we used to have the TD come in maybe 4 times a year.
Oh, okay.
And rather than people having to take day off to go get their mandatory training, which I'm sure a lot of people just get trained to work, I do, but it was a way to educate the board on different development, different things to look at, but also count towards their training. I think we're required to do 4 hours a year.
Yeah, right, that's a third dimension of it, absolutely.
So I think it's helpful when you can bring someone in, do an hour as a clip, maybe limit the agenda to a couple things that are less pressing, so we're not here to talk about it, knock it out. Or even if we did it before, I don't know if we can do that. We did like 6 o'clock training, and then it's like maybe it's 7.
Yeah, we probably could do that. We just need to, it's a quorum, we need to notice it. Yeah, it wouldn't be too much different than normal meetings.
And I don't know if that's, we can, it's down the road, but we'll figure out whatever format works best for people time. I'm certainly flexible.
So stormwater sounds like, an hour's worth of training makes some sense to start
Sounds
with.
extremely exciting.
Dahlia, do you have anything to add on that?
No, basically the workshops will just consist on knowing how to ask the right questions to the applicants about impervious surfaces, stormwater, and all that the entails. So that's one thing that we want to get for you to have knowledge on. So we cover all the basics in every single project.
I went to one on May 2019. Is that the last one they held? It was in Skodak?
I'm not aware
Do
of.
they do it once a year? or-
They do that frequently. That's a little bit different. That's the 4-hour.
Storm.
This will be our TE coming in,
Okay.
and one of our TEs.
Yeah, I think the one that you took, Nancy, was the one that we are required to have a certification on,
Okay.
Adam and myself, so we can go and do
It's 4 hours,
inspections.
yeah.
Yeah, that one you guys are not required to take on.
And that one's oriented more toward, like, actually, it's required under the permit for contractors, exactly. So this would be more, like Dahlia said, you know, how to interrogate a plan and, you know, to achieve stormwater related goals, whatever those might be.
Ask everyone to do forest pavement.
Yeah. That's one option, or just reduce the parking.
Green room.
Well-
Wow, we did that tonight.
Yeah.
We're ahead of the
Green
game.
barrels.
I don't think we need training. It's more smart. Alright. So what's the time frame for that? This
We've
depends
got,
on the agenda, or how much business you have, right?
probably, yeah, it probably will, but we can, I mean, if it's okay with you guys, we can prioritize that and push people off. And I mean, we have pretty heavy, 2 times a month is,
Keep in mind, we have 6 meetings left.
Yeah.
One's a Thanksgiving meeting, that's always the night before Thanksgiving, that always gets canceled. And one is, I don't know how it relates to Christmas. What that is, if that
what I'd like to do is do it this year because we do have some money in the budget for, you know, this type of thing, you know, consultant services, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think 1 hour training, I mean, there's some prep work to do, but 1 hour training, I'd say 4 hours, $500.
Yeah.
There's also no meeting the beginning of November because it falls on Veterans Day.
So there's no.
Better get thinking
So then,
around.
yeah, it's Wednesday, the 25th of November. Then we have one in.
I mean, what we done, we could always, again, up to whatever people's schedules are, but we could always do a meeting, have a special meeting somewhere in between. It always seems like when that stuff like that happens, we end up leaving people hanging.
The December meeting is
Yeah,
December
it's the night
23rd.
before Christmas Eve, 23rd.
That won't be well attended, will it?
I mean, I got one engineer who came in, and I'll just like,
I could be wrong, but I think that the new plaza that George built,
I've got forest pavement.
that is a permeable parking.
Yeah, I mean, that all depends on what your soil is.
On what the what?
What your soil is.
Yeah. And I'm curious to see how well that'll hold up.
Under the Couch Corners, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but under the Couch Corners roundabout, they have this big retention, big yellow plastic retention. I don't know what to call it, it's like a half circle.
Yeah.
Chambers.
Yeah, upside down, and then underneath they put a bunch of stones.
I just put those in my project, it was, I don't know how well they're gonna work.
Yeah.
I don't understand them, I watch them put them in,
I-
for the life of me, I'm like, how the hell?
That's been in there, that circle's been in there for like 9 years at this point, that's a blast.
It's never bubbled over.
So who's supposed to maintain those?
There's cleanout ports.
Wait, you mean have?
There's cleanout ports. And
Yeah, you can
open
see
the
actually-
ports up and you climb down in. Then they say, and take a mirror and put it on a broomstick, they actually say that in the directions. So that when you're down in that manhole, you put a mirror on a stick and you put it in to see how dirty it is.
That's why,
I mean, that's what the directions said on it.
if you look at mobile, there's it's not asphalt, it's almost concrete, it's on a walkway. But the driveway inside of mobile on 151, that's so you can get trucks, like that. Never seen truck.
I think that's a DOT responsibility.
Pass the buck, Adam. That was quick.
Yeah, they're gonna miss four too.
All right, anything else?
Not too much.
Oh. Let's see if we do this right. Rick, I'm gonna make a motion to close the planning board meeting. Nice, all in favor? Aye.